How you doing? Once again, we're here with Biology 230, Cell and Genetic Biology. Today we're going to talk about photosynthesis. So let's go ahead and get started. Now, first thing you need to understand is that all organisms need to have some form of energy consumption. So you have those organisms that basically get their energy from the sun, and those that actually go around gobbling up carbon sources as their energy. But regardless, whether you're getting your energy from the sun or you're going around eating other organisms, you're actually looking for some kind of carbon source. The two main categories, you have the photoautotrophs and the heterotrophs. The photoautotrophs mainly get their carbon source from carbon dioxide, and then they utilize sunlight energy to transform that carbon source into carbohydrates that are easy for the cells to consume, such as sucrose, and they may actually store some in the form of starch. Now, heterotrophs, they basically go around consuming other organisms as their carbon source, and their digestive process will actually break it down into something their cells can actually utilize as a food source. Now, photoautotrophs, these organisms basically capture sunlight from the sun. So some examples of these organisms are plants, some bacteria, and then you have the protists. Now, the protists are unicellular organisms that usually live in the aquatic ecosystem, where you might find fish and frogs and organisms such as that. Now, these organisms go around gobbling up other organisms, but these organisms can go around engaging in photosynthesis just like your plants, and so can your bacteria. Now, a lot of organisms that engage in photosynthesis, organisms have some kind of photo capture pigmentation. A lot of times we refer to that as chlorophyll. A lot of times plants are green in coloration because of the chlorophyll in the cells that are actually used to capture sunlight energy. Right here in this picture, we are depicting what's actually going on. We have sunlight energy being released from the sun. You have a photoautotroph, such as this strawberry plant, actually capturing this sunlight energy. And then once photosynthesis occurs, the energy that is produced is actually transported throughout all the plant structures, from all the way from the stem system all the way to the root system, to make sure all the cells are fed. Now, as a byproduct of this, some of the energy is actually utilized to actually form the fruits. The fruits are mainly a transportation mechanism to basically take the juvenile plants or the seeds to other locations. Usually some organism will come around and eat the fruit which is containing the seeds, and then when they defecate, the actual plant, juvenile plant, is deposited in a new location, and then the seed will germinate and form a new strawberry plant or a new plant in general. So that's the whole purpose of this process. Photosynthesis feeds all the cells. It also lets them live long enough to reproduce, make your seed, and then hopefully these seeds germinate and form new plants and the generation lives on. So, here's some examples of photosynthetic organisms. Once again, if you notice one thing, whether they're multicellular or unicellular, they're actually green in coloration, whether it's living in an aquatic ecosystem or in terrestrial areas. So this guy, Englemann, had a theory about this. Well, they're engaging in photosynthesis and producing their energy from the sun, but what else is required for this to actually occur? So he did an experiment with bacteria, and he also did an experiment with algae to see if he can manipulate the growth of these organisms based upon the consumption of oxygen and the amount of light he's actually allowing them to be exposed to. Now, here is a figure basically depicting this. Right here you have your algal population. Okay, it's steady from 400 nanometers of light to 700 nanometers of light. Here you actually have bacteria. These little white rods are bacteria growing in the environment. Now, there's actually a blossom or a boost or an increase in growth of the bacteria somewhere around 400 to 500 nanometers of light. Then it tends to taper off. Then you see it blossom again at 650 to 700 nanometers of light. Then it picks back up again. So if the bacteria are increasing in growth what's really going on there? Now, these are aerobic bacteria, so they're increasing in growth based upon the availability of oxygen. The algal growth is based upon the availability of light. So the algae is growing continuously throughout the entire spectrum, okay? But you see an increase here and an increase here. So if these guys like oxygen, you would assume that there's probably more oxygen being produced in this area versus this area. Well, the oxygen, where is it coming from? As a byproduct of photosynthesis, algae produce oxygen basically as a waste product. They don't need it, but other organisms in the environment can utilize it as an energy source. So the bacteria can utilize oxygen as an energy source. So we can assume that there's maybe an increase in photosynthesis around this rate and around this area right here, assuming that there's a higher level of photosynthesis occurring here and here. So one thing we learned right now is that there are certain organisms that utilize oxygen as an energy source to actually produce their carbon structure, and other organisms that utilize carbon dioxide, which is the plant structure, because carbon dioxide, water, and sunlight are needed for photosynthesis. For anaerobic respiration to actually make your energy source that the cells can use from your carbon source that you consume, you mainly need oxygen. So for photosynthetic organisms, basically they need oxygen. They do not need oxygen, they need carbon dioxide. And for aerobic organisms, they mainly need oxygen and they do not need carbon dioxide. Here is the photosynthesis equation. This is basically how plants grow. This is how they get the energy. This is what they need to actually start the process. You must need water. You must have carbon dioxide, and you need the sunlight. The sunlight releases energy in the environment to give enough energy to break these stable structures apart so you can rearrange the atoms to basically make your glucose. Some of the byproducts of this reaction are your water and your oxygen. Okay? This usually requires 12 units of water, 6 units of carbon dioxide to actually make 1 unit of glucose. Okay? Make sure you understand it. Have a Simpsons character here dancing around because this is important stuff. You'll need to know this for the rest of your life. So how do you actually do this? In the actual reaction itself, the atoms are released from water and they're released from carbon dioxide. 12 of these units of oxygen right here, because you actually only have 12, basically go to only form oxygen gas. Now here you actually have 24 units of hydrogen. Half of those units go to form the glucose, because you only need 12. The remainder basically go to form water. As far as the carbon dioxide, you have 6 carbons here, and you actually have 12 oxygens. Now, you only need 6 carbons and 6 oxygens to actually make your glucose, so all 6 carbons go here, half of these oxygens go here, and the remainder of the oxygens actually go to form water. And that's basically how you get the atoms that you need to form glucose, C6H12O6. Now, there is a light-dependent reaction, light-independent reaction. Regardless of what kind of organism you're talking about, the main thing is they have structures that are equipped to harness the energy from the sun and actually make this energy ATP, which is a universal energy source. Now, in most cases, what's actually happening is the energy from the sun is allowing for the breaking apart of other molecules in the environment to release hydrogen ions and electrons. The electrons bounce around in a membrane, whether it's the chloroplast organelle or mitochondrial organelle. Both of them have a lipid bilayer or a double membrane lipid that actually allows for them to trap hydrogen ions. Then the electron will keep bouncing around in the structure and then eventually hit a proton channel referred to as an ATP synthase channel. When that actually happens, this channel opens up. This is the only way for hydrogen ions to escape through a lipid bilayer, because they have a positive charge. That positive charge prevents them from just seeping through a lipid bilayer, such as the one found in these 2 organelles. So the only way for it to escape is to go through this protein channel. Why does it want to escape? Because as these hydrogen donating structures keep getting used up, this concentration gets getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Eventually, it'll hit a carrying capacity. At that point, all these ions will keep colliding. They'll keep hitting each other until the point where they'll keep bouncing around and moving around all the time. They don't want to do that. That's not fun for them. So they want to get to a environment where they have equal distance between each one of the ions. So they want to get from this space to any other space where there's a decrease in concentration of the ions. So what's going to happen when this door opens up? Bam, they're going to shoot through. Now, this particular protein channel is equipped to harness the energy as it passes through to actually release a little bit of energy here to actually allow for any free-floating phosphates and ADPs to bond together. When that happens, basically you get ATP, which is a universal cellular energy form. So, I said you have a light-independent and a light-dependent reaction. The light-dependent reaction basically occurs during the daytime when the sun is available. The light-independent reaction can occur at any time during the day or night, just depending on how much energy is available in the environment and when the actual photosynthetic organism needs to make more energy. So during the light-dependent reaction, you take the water, the sunlight energy in the form of a photon will actually break this structure apart. It's called photolysis or hydrolysis. Basically, lysis is the breaking apart of a substance. Photolysis means you're using light energy to break it apart. Hydrolysis mainly refers to you actually breaking apart water itself. So you're actually breaking apart water to release the electrons and hydrogens and the oxygens. So when you break up that water, where do the elements go? Okay. Well, you actually have some energy storage molecules in the environment. You have this structure right here, which is ready and willing to actually accept the hydrogen ion, and it forms NADPH. You have this structure right here, which is ready and willing to accept the electron, this and the free-floating phosphate to actually form ATP. So now you have energy storage molecules right here that will be used in the light-independent reaction. The leftover oxygen will be actually released as oxygen gas. It can be used for later or released outside the environment. Now, here you have the light-independent reaction, also referred to as Calvin-Benson cycle. This is basically a carbon recycling cycle. All it basically does is look for energy. When the energy presents itself in the form of ATP, it basically will use that to actually add any additional elements, such as the carbon and the oxygens found in this carbon dioxide, break that apart, add it to the actual structure to actually create a 6-carbon structure that is either stored, well, starch is actually multiple individual 6-carbon structures linked together. It's a very large molecule for storing a lot of glucoses into one big molecule, or a polymer. Or it'll actually be used to form sucrose, which is the mobile form of the sugar, which can be transported to all the cells of the plant body or all the structures in that individual celled organism very rapidly. So this is basically what happens in your light-dependent and independent reaction.